My stepdaughter's dad spoiled her with expensive food and cash, so I took from my own sons to keep things fair. I let her have everything, punished my boys when they complained, and defended her no matter what. Now my sons have exposed me, cut me off, and I'm realizing I destroyed my family for the child I favored. I remarried 4 years ago. I have 2 sons from my previous marriage, now 16 and 14. My wife has a daughter who is 13. We've all lived together since the wedding. There were growing pains at first, but nothing that felt unmanageable. My sons were polite, my stepdaughter kept to herself, and I believed structure would eventually smooth everything out. The main complication is my stepdaughter's biological father. He's not very present. He cancels visits, shows up late, and forgets important things. But he has money, and instead of being consistent, he throws cash and stuff at her to make up for it. Expensive takeout multiple times a week, new clothes, prepaid cards, random deliveries, things that show up without warning and without discussion. I could see the imbalance forming early. My sons noticed too. They didn't say much at first, but it was obvious they were clocking it. Different food, different treatment, different expectations. I didn't want that dynamic in my house. I grew up watching favoritism rot families, and I was determined not to let it happen here. So I decided to enforce fairness myself. I didn't take things from my stepdaughter. That wasn't an option. Her father was giving those things, and taking them would have caused constant conflict and resentment toward my wife. Instead, I tightened things on my son's side. Less allowance, fewer extras, no impulse spending. If something had to be cut, it came from them. My reasoning was simple. If one child is receiving more, the others don't need as much. I didn't announce this as some big rule change. I adjusted things quietly. If they asked for money, the answer was no. If they wanted to go out, they needed a reason. I told them it was about discipline and learning that life isn't equal. I framed it as preparing them for adulthood. They didn't take it well. They started asking why their stepsister could eat out while they couldn't. Why she had new things while they were told to make do. I told them comparison thinking leads to resentment. I told them they should focus on what they had, not what someone else was getting. When they kept pushing, I treated it as disrespect. I will be honest here. I do not respond well to complaining. I believe constant questioning undermines authority. So when they pushed, consequences followed. Grounding, loss of privileges, extra chores. I didn't yell or lose control, but I didn't budge either. From my perspective, backing down would have taught them that enough resistance gets results. My wife was uncomfortable, but mostly stayed out of it. She'd say I was being harsh, but she also said she didn't want her daughter punished for what her ex did. I agreed with that. I told her someone had to be the adult and think long term. Things shifted slowly after that. My sons stopped asking for things. They stopped bringing friends over. Meals became quiet. They'd eat and leave. I took this as sulking and waited it out. Teenagers test boundaries. That's normal. What I didn't expect was how isolated they became. One started staying late at school. The other stopped participating in activities he used to care about. When I addressed it, they said there was no point since everything they enjoyed got taken anyway. I saw this as manipulation and made it clear I wouldn't be guilted into changing rules. At the same time, my stepdaughter settled in. She followed the rules I set. She didn't argue. She didn't complain. From my perspective, she adapted better, which only reinforced my belief that my approach was right. I defended her whenever my sons implied she was being favored. I shut those conversations down immediately. I don't know if being firm now will prevent resentment later, or if I've already done the damage. Update 1. I read the comments on my first post, even the ones I didn't agree with. A lot of people said I was escalating instead of fixing anything. I didn't see it that way at the time. What I saw was the situation getting worse because my stepdaughter's dad kept increasing what he was giving her, and my house felt more uneven by the week. So I tightened things further. I cut their allowance completely, not as punishment, just as a household adjustment. I told them they didn't need spending money when everything they needed was already provided. I stopped paying for small extras like snacks at school or outings with friends, unless there was a specific reason. I also decided we didn't need multiple entertainment things in the house, so I sold the gaming console they shared. The money went into groceries and bills. I told them that was part of contributing to a family. They did not take that well. They stopped asking for permission and started acting withdrawn. One of them barely left his room unless he had to. The other started staying out late, not doing anything wrong, just avoiding being home. When I brought it up, I was told I was making things miserable on purpose. I saw that as exaggeration. Teenagers tend to react strongly when they don't get their way. At the same time, my stepdaughter wasn't causing problems. She followed the rules I set. She did her chores. She didn't complain about what she got or didn't get from me. From my point of view, she was adapting better to the structure, and that only confirmed I was doing the right thing. When my sons implied she was getting special treatment, I shut that down immediately. I wasn't going to let them gang up on her or make her feel guilty for what her father provided. I also canceled a planned weekend trip I had talked about doing with my sons. It wasn't anything huge, just a couple days away. I realized my stepdaughter couldn't be included easily, and I didn't think it was appropriate to keep doing things that excluded one child. I told my sons it didn't make sense to do trips that only benefited some people in the house. They accused me of changing the rules whenever it suited me. I told them families adapt and they needed to accept that. That's when my wife started pulling back. She didn't argue with me outright, but she stopped backing me up in front of the kids. She'd tell me privately that things felt tense and that maybe I was being too rigid. I told her consistency matters more than comfort. I also pointed out that she wasn't offering solutions, just criticism. After that, she mostly stayed quiet. Looking back, that silence probably mattered more than I realized. Things came to a head one night when I overheard my sons talking in their room. They were complaining about how everything had changed since I remarried, about how they felt like guests in their own house, about how their stepsister always came first. I stepped in immediately. I told them that talking behind my back instead of addressing issues directly was disrespectful. I grounded both of them on the spot. One of them said something that stuck with me. He said it felt like I'd replaced them with a new family and expected them to be fine with it. I told him that was an unfair accusation and that he was confusing boundaries with rejection. I sent them to their rooms and made it clear the grounding wasn't up for debate. After that, the house went quiet in a way that felt different. They didn't argue anymore. They didn't complain. They didn't even look annoyed. They just did what they were told and disappeared. Meals were silent. Weekends felt empty even though everyone was home. I told myself this was the adjustment period people online had mentioned, that resistance fades once rules are enforced long enough. Still, I can't ignore that something shifted after that night. It wasn't anger anymore. It was distance. I'm posting this update because people said my first post sounded controlled and detached. Maybe that's true. But from where I'm standing, I'm trying to keep one household from splitting into sides. I don't think it's wrong to expect my sons to understand that fairness doesn't always look the way they want it to. I still believe backing down now would make everything worse. I just didn't expect the cost to feel this quiet. Update 2. I didn't expect my last update to be followed by what actually happened next. I thought things would just stay tense and quiet for a while and eventually settle into a new normal. Instead, it spilled outside the house in a way I wasn't prepared for. A few days after I posted update 1, my brother contacted me. He and I aren't especially close, but he's always been around for my kids. He asked me why my sons were asking to stay with him more often. I told him they were overreacting to new rules and needed space to cool off. He didn't agree. He said they sounded exhausted, not angry. I took that as him enabling them. Then he showed up in person. He didn't come to argue. He came with information. Apparently my older son had been keeping track of everything for months. Not just big stuff, but patterns, meals, money, punishments, things that got taken away, things that were never offered, dates, reasons, outcomes. I didn't believe it at first. I assumed my brother was exaggerating or misunderstanding teenage venting. He wasn't. He showed me pages of notes and screenshots. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't emotional. That was the part that bothered me the most. It was organized, calm, like a record. I told him it was obsessive and unhealthy. He told me it was what kids do when they feel like no one is listening. I didn't respond well to that. I told him he was interfering in my household and undermining my authority. He told me my authority had already been undermined because my sons no longer trusted me. We ended the conversation badly. That same night, my wife finally stopped staying neutral. She admitted something I hadn't known. She had been giving my sons money on the side. Small amounts, nothing dramatic, enough for snacks or school things. She said she couldn't stand watching them go without, while her daughter had more than she needed. I felt blindsided, not because of the money, but because she went behind my back. To me, that crossed a line. We argued about it, not yelling, but sharp and unresolved. I told her she was undoing the structure I put in place. She told me structure shouldn't require secrecy to survive. She said she felt like she was choosing between her marriage and 2 kids who felt pushed out. I told her that framing was unfair and dramatic. After that, things moved fast. My sons packed bags and went to my brother's house without asking. They didn't leave a note. They didn't text. I found out when my brother called and told me they were safe and staying with him for a bit. I told him to bring them home. He said they weren't ready. I said that wasn't his call. He said someone had to make it. I drove over there that night. My sons wouldn't come outside. My brother did. He said they needed time, and that forcing them back would make things worse. I told him avoiding problems doesn't solve them. He told me sometimes distance is the solution. We went in circles. When I got home, my wife didn't defend me. She didn't argue either. She just said the house didn't feel safe for them emotionally right now. That wording bothered me. It felt like therapy language. I told her safety shouldn't mean comfort at the expense of rules. Over the next few days, I tried to get my sons to come back. I texted, I called. I didn't apologize because I didn't believe I'd done something wrong that required one. I told them we could talk when they were ready to follow house rules again. They didn't respond. What they did instead was talk to everyone else. My brother knew details I never shared. Apparently my sons had been opening up for months. To him, to their mom, to a school counselor. All of it painted the same picture, and none of it lined up with how I saw myself. I was described as controlling, rigid, and transactional. I didn't recognize that version of me, and that scared me more than anything. Still, I held my ground. I told my wife I wasn't chasing after kids who ran away the moment things got hard. I said they'd come back once they realized real life doesn't bend to feelings. She asked me what would happen if they didn't. I told her they would. As of now, they're still with my brother. They aren't answering me directly. Everything goes through him or their mom. I'm being told to give them space. I'm being told to reflect. I'm being told this isn't about money or food, but about feeling chosen. I don't fully agree with that, but I can't ignore that the house feels different without them. Not calmer, just hollow. I still believe apologizing for rules sets a bad precedent. I still believe consistency matters, and I still believe they'll come back once emotions cool down. I just didn't expect so many people to step in between me and my own kids before that happened. Update 3. I thought the next update would be about a blow-up, a fight, some kind of forced sit-down where everyone finally said their piece. That's usually how these things go, right? Someone snaps, lawyers get mentioned, voices get raised. That didn't happen. Instead, nothing happened, and that turned out to be worse. After my sons went to stay with my brother, there was a lot of noise at first. People telling me what I should do. People telling me I was wrong. My brother kept pushing for a conversation. Their mother sent long messages about how hurt they were. Even my wife kept asking me to reconsider how I'd handled things. I didn't change my position. I told everyone the same thing. I wasn't apologizing for rules. I wasn't begging kids who chose to leave. If they wanted to come home, the door was open, but the expectations weren't changing. Then, slowly, the noise stopped. Texts went unanswered. Calls stopped coming. My brother didn't argue anymore. He didn't threaten or lecture. He just stopped engaging. Their mom stopped sending messages entirely. Even my wife stopped trying to mediate. She wasn't cold exactly, just distant, practical, like someone who already made a decision and didn't need to sell it anymore. At first, I took that as a good sign. I told myself this was what boundaries looked like. Everyone stepping back. Emotions cooling off. I figured my sons were finally realizing that staying angry forever wasn't realistic. That living with my brother wasn't some long-term solution. I doubled down on consistency at home. Same routines, same rules, same expectations. I thought when they were ready, they'd come back to something stable. Weeks went by. No updates, no asking for money, no complaints filtering back through family. It was like they'd dropped off the map. I asked my brother once how they were doing. He said they were fine and changed the subject. That should have bothered me more than it did. What finally cracked things open wasn't a fight, it was paperwork. I found out through my wife, almost by accident, that the boys weren't commuting from my brother's place anymore. They'd switched schools, quietly, no announcement, no discussion. My brother handled it. Their mom signed off. The school accepted it. Life moved on. When I asked my wife why I hadn't been told, she said she didn't think I wanted to be involved. That stung more than I expected. I told her that wasn't her call. She said neither was forcing kids back into a situation they were clearly done with. We didn't argue. That was the strange part. It felt like we were already past the point where arguing would change anything. The house felt different after that. Not louder or quieter, just emptier in a way I couldn't fix by staying busy. Meals were simpler, groceries lasted longer, there were fewer complaints, fewer messes, fewer things to manage. On paper, it was easier. My stepdaughter seemed happier. She didn't say it outright, but it showed. Less tension. More comfort moving around the house. She didn't flinch anymore when I enforced rules because most of them weren't aimed at her to begin with. I noticed that too. I told myself that meant I'd been right about the source of the conflict all along. At one point, I asked her how she felt about everything. Not in a deep way. Just checking in. She shrugged and said the house felt calmer now. She said she didn't really miss the boys and that things were easier without all the fighting. She didn't say it to be cruel. That's what stuck with me. It wasn't said with attitude or spite, it was just an observation. Like commenting on the weather. That was when it hit me that the situation hadn't paused. It had resolved itself without me. No one was waiting for me to change my mind. No one was holding space for reconciliation. Decisions were being made, routines established, lives adjusted. I wasn't being challenged anymore because I wasn't part of the equation in the way I thought I was. I still believed I'd done what I thought was fair. I still believed my reasoning made sense, but I couldn't ignore the fact that my role had quietly shrunk, not taken away in a dramatic way, just reduced. Redirected around, I didn't lose my sons in one big moment. I lost them through a series of small, reasonable steps taken by other adults who decided stability mattered more than proving a point. That's where things stand now. They're settled somewhere else. The house runs smoothly. No one is actively mad at me. And somehow that feels worse than if they were. I don't know yet what that means for the long term. I just know the fight I thought I was still in ended without me noticing. Final update. It's been a few months since my last post, and I figured I should close this out, if only to be honest about how things actually ended instead of how I assumed they would. I thought the chaos had been the problem. What I didn't expect was how permanent the silence would become. My wife didn't push for reconciliation anymore. She didn't bring up family counseling or ask me to reconsider rules. She handled things like schedules, bills, and school matters efficiently, almost like a coworker. At first I assumed she was giving me time. Then one afternoon she told me she'd signed a lease for a small place closer to her work and her daughter's school. She wasn't angry when she said it. She didn't cry. She said she needed space and that living together wasn't helping anyone. A few weeks later, I was served papers. Separation, not some dramatic filing full of accusations. The reason listed was irreconcilable parenting values. That wording stuck with me. Not betrayal, not neglect, just values that didn't line up anymore. Around the same time, I finally got clarity about my sons, though not directly from them. Their mother sent me a copy of a revised custody agreement. It outlined limited contact, scheduled check-ins, and clear boundaries. The language was neutral, no blame, just structure. It mentioned that extended interactions had been emotionally exhausting for them and that this arrangement was what they felt they could manage. I didn't respond right away. I didn't know how to. I kept waiting for anger, for accusations, for something I could argue against. It never came. I asked if they wanted to talk. The response I got was that they weren't ready and didn't know when they would be, that they were doing better with less pressure, that they needed consistency they could trust. Reading that felt like getting the wind knocked out of me, not because it was cruel, but because it made sense in a way I hadn't allowed myself to see before. By the time the separation was finalized, the house felt too big. I still believed in fairness. I still believed in rules and structure, but there was no one left to enforce them on. The systems I'd built worked perfectly. They just didn't hold anyone anymore. The last thing I expected was what happened with my stepdaughter. After the separation, her father stepped in fully. Not in some dramatic rescue way, he just offered to take her full time. Better school options, more stability, fewer transitions. My wife agreed. It was practical, logical. I didn't object because objecting would have been about pride, not what made sense. She moved out quietly, packed her room over a weekend, took the things that mattered to her. She hugged me goodbye, thanked me for trying, and left. There wasn't a big moment, just another door closing without a fight. Now I live alone in the same house where I once thought I was holding everything together. I have what I said I wanted: order, quiet, no competing needs, no complaints about fairness, no arguments about money. Everything is balanced because there's no one left to balance it against. I'm not writing this to ask how to fix it. I don't think there's a fix in the way people usually mean that. My sons didn't cut me off out of spite. My wife didn't leave in anger. My stepdaughter didn't reject me. They all chose peace in ways that didn't require me anymore. And now I understand the